This is The Long Road to Publishing, the podcast where we hear from authors who have traveled a long and bumpy road to publishing their books. Whether you're just starting out on your own writing and publishing journey, or if you're all too aware of the many possible detours along the way, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Eva Langston, author, writing instructor, and creator of Eva's newsletter for writers on Substack. Thank you so much for coming along on the ride. Okay, I'm not the type of person to talk about how awesome technology is, but I will say this. It is incredible that we live in a day and age when I can connect on social media with an Australian author who lives in Malaysia, and then we can have a video call to chat about writing and publishing despite the thousands and thousands of miles between us. So it really was such a pleasure to talk with Raidah Shah Idil, whose middle grade fantasy novel was first published in Australia by Allen and Unwin. Then Salaam Reads, which is an imprint of Simon Schuster, published and distributed the book in the US, Canada, and the UK this past November. Raidah and I talk about writing and publishing, and we bond over being writer moms with type A personalities. A short reminder, as always, to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast, and share about The Long Road to Publishing on social media and in real life. And now, on with the episode, which I'm calling A Book Deal Across the Ocean. Australian author Raidah Shah Idil was born in Singapore, grew up in Sydney, worked in Jordan, and now lives in Malaysia with her husband, 3 children, and mother-in-law. Raidah earned her BA in English and BS in Psychology from the University of New South Wales and her Diploma of Counselling from the Australian Institute of Professional Counsellors. Raidah's debut middle-grade fantasy novel, To Free A Jinn, was highly commended by the Victorian Literary Premier Awards and won the Readings Children's Prize in 2025. Salaam Reads, an imprint of Simon & Schuster, has published and distributed the book in the US, Canada, and the UK. Raidah loves ginger tea and noodle soup and dreams of uninterrupted sleep. So welcome to The Long Road to Publishing.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, me too. Well, and I know we were talking a little before we started recording that you have 3 young children, and we are also recording this. I like to think you're in the future because I think we have like a 13-hour time difference?
Yeah, 13 hours.
Yeah, so I just got my kids off to school, and for you, it's nighttime, and hopefully your kids are sound asleep by now.
Hopefully they're sound asleep. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's probably part of the reason for your dreams of uninterrupted sleep, I'm imagining.
Absolutely. Yes.
Well, before we dive into your publishing journey, which I know it's been a long, crazy one, do you want to just tell us a little bit about your middle grade novel, To Free A Jinn?
So it follows the adventures of 12-year-old Inshira, who left Malaysia, her country of origin, under very mysterious circumstances when she was really little. And she's been living with her mom in Sydney, Australia. But when her nenek, her grandma, has a bad fall, it's time to go back home to look after grandma. And she's already really upset. And then the journey unfolds about how she has all of these struggles, not just in the regular world, like getting to a new school, making new friends, weather's really hot, but supernatural difficulties as well. And that uncovers this secret in her family, that the women in her family can see and control jinn. And one day she will inherit one of her own. So that's the pitch.
Oh, I love that. I mean, it's hard enough to be a 12-year-old, but then when you find out that you have a supernatural secret in your family, although controlling your own jinn kind of sounds like it could be a good thing. I don't know. I guess
we'll find out.
I guess people have to read the book to find out. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, so this book just came out in the US and Canada in November, right? But we're going to go kind of all the way back and rewind and sort of see how you got to where you are now. So a lot of writers say, oh, I've always wanted to be a writer, but is there a time when you were like, okay, I'm going to get serious about this?
That's a great question because I can tell you exactly when. I think it would have been when I found myself unexpectedly pregnant with my 3rd baby. So at the time, I already had my 2 daughters, my 4-year-old and no, wait, she must have been 3, my 3-year-old and my 6-month-old. I
Oh
was
my
like,
goodness.
wait a minute. Okay. And it's really funny because I didn't even realize I was pregnant till like maybe 3 months in. I was just so exhausted, just looking after my two other children, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then when I was there in the doctor's office, the ultrasound, I'm like, this is it. If I want to write that book of my dreams, I've always wanted to, like, I'm on a timer, literally, because I knew what was gonna happen. Like once it's like the newborn phase and like the sleep deprivation and juggling three kids instead of two, I'm like, you know what? While my third baby is contained, and I'm really grateful, thanks to my mom, amazing genes. Like I've had really happy, easy pregnancies. I'm actually like really happy and just like it's actually a really happy time for me, aside from right at the end where I'm like, when is it gonna be
Right.
over? Right. So I'm like, okay, this is it. This is the time where I need to draft and finish. Because I was like, I've been like many authors, like I've been tinkering with like five separate manuscripts, not really committing to one because I was afraid that if I did, it would get rejected.
Yep. This is
Right.
sounds familiar.
Sounds
Yeah.
familiar. So I'm like, okay, that's enough. It is time to just do it like properly. And while I was pregnant with my second baby, I attended like a book event because one of my short stories had been shortlisted for this, anthology in Malaysia. And I met Hannah Al-Kaf for the first time in person. And she's been published through Salaam Reads as well for many years now. Her debut was a young adult, The Weight of Our Sky. And when I saw like a fellow like Malay Muslim hijabi mom, I'm like, wow, she has a New York literary agent. She has a book deal. Like maybe one day I can too. The whole saying, like, if you see it, you can be it or something. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
I'm mangling it. Yeah. So I was like, oh, that's amazing. So that, kind of planted that seed. Plus her direct feedback to me was like, Raidah, finish your first draft. So I did. So that was the time. Okay. I have to buckle down and just do it. Yeah.
Two things are coming to mind. I mean, one is I think you're totally right of like that's why it's so important for kids to see themselves in books because exactly what you're saying, like
Yeah.
you maybe didn't quite realize it was possible for you until you were like, wait a minute, here's someone else who's like me who has this.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, so you're definitely not the first person who's told me that they kind of got serious either when they were pregnant or had just had a baby. Like I remember when I was pregnant with my second, I gave myself the deadline of I'm going to be finished with the draft of this novel before the baby is due. No better deadline, you know.
Absolutely. So,
But it is
yeah.
a little crazy to me that you also had a very young baby and a toddler. So that
Yes.
how did you find the time?
Honestly, the secret is just living in Malaysia in a multi-generational household. That is the secret.
Okay.
Okay. Because I had like a lot of inbuilt support, like from my supportive husband to like my mom-in-law. So when he was at work in the office, then if my oldest was in preschool, then my mom-in-law would look after like the baby, just for like at least like a couple of mornings a week. So I could just happily go from restaurant to restaurant, eat yummy food, and like draft my book. And I didn't have that, worry about I have to juggle all of it. Like I think it's such a ridiculous daily ask for anyone, like especially like a pregnant mom who's trying to write to do everything because it's impossible. It's like literally you need so many people on board. So that's why. And I think like if I were, back in Sydney, where it would be just me, my husband, and kids, it would have been a lot harder. The inbuilt support that I have in Malaysia every day is invaluable. That's pretty much the secret, getting help. That's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
it.
I will generalize a little bit, but especially for a lot of US mothers who don't have, it's not as much a part of our culture to have that inbuilt support. And I remember actually, my mom lives about 2.5 hours away. And there was a time when I was trying to get a revision done, and I left my toddler at home with my husband, and I drove down to my mom's house with the baby and just had her take care of the baby all day so I could get the revision done. But it was like, it would have been easier if she lived closer. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, so you gave yourself this timeline of I'm going to finish this draft. And was this draft you were working on the book that would become How to Free a Jinn?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Although at the
okay.
time it was a young adult novel.
You, I'm guessing, finished the manuscript, the baby was born, and then what
Yes.
happened?
And then I started querying. So I would have told my past self. to not do that to myself. But hey, hindsight is 2020. And as you can relate to, I'm sure anyone who's queried at least once, it's like you send out the first query letter and you're just waiting, waiting in the inbox for a while. It's like, oh no, it's gonna take a while. So it actually took about 10 months. So by that point, this is in 2020, it's like end of 2019, start of 2020. I had been querying for about 10 months by that point, and I had given myself like this mental boundary. Like if I don't get an offer of representation by 1 year, I'm gonna like shelve this book and work on something else. Like my anxiety would not be able to take it anymore by that point. Plus like three young children, right? Yeah. And at one point I had maybe like 14 fulls out with agents in the US. And I'm okay, this is promising. But it wasn't until my current agent, the only one who offered, I only had a single offer. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I wish I would have like 10 competing offers or blah, 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 blah. It's like, you don't need that. You just need one solid agent who's got your back, and that can lead to a book deal. And I still remember like the Zoom call I had with Ali, Alison Helligers from Simola Literary. It was about 9 p.m. my time and 9 a.m. her time. And I had my baby boy who was, he would have been like maybe a year by then. Yeah, a year old. Yeah. And he was strapped into the little carrier, and I was sitting on like the bouncing ball. And we were just we were just having alcohol. And she was like telling me how much she loved my book, and to tell the other agents that she's offering to represent. It was so incredible. I mean, little did I know at the time that it would take years to sell, but that was a very, very epic core memory.
And yeah, and I will also say for anybody listening who's maybe pregnant or thinking about it, that is how you get writing done, is you put the baby in the carrier and you
That's
bounce on the
right.
bouncy ball
Bounce
and
on
you
the
type.
ball.
Because I totally did that too. Yeah, and if you stop bouncing, they will wake up.
Oh my God.
So,
That's right. So keep bouncing. It's
yeah.
great for like balance and everything.
Yeah.
But if you're tired, just sleep. It's okay to rest.
Well, that's true too. Yeah. So then you got your agent, and like you said, it only takes one. And at that point, it was a YA novel. And so
Yes.
did you guys work on revisions? Did you go out on submission right away? What happened?
So Ali is an editorial agent, which is exactly what I needed. So we did revise for a couple of months, and then in from March 2021 to around September, that's when she started sending it out to editors, and like my dream imprint was always Salaam Reads, was always that imprint of Simon Schuster, right? But I think because of like COVID or something, supply chains or whatnot, that whole time, things were really challenging. And the rejections that we got were like the really nice kinds, like, oh, we love the characters and blah, blah, blah. But we can't get it past acquisitions. Like we can't get it past marketing. It's like, oh man. So the editors would love it, but they wouldn't be able to see like if this was like a financially viable thing, because it's a book set outside of the US and I'm an author set outside of the US. So interestingly, it was one of my American beta readers who told me that, Raidah, when I'm reading your book, Inshira, your main character, she doesn't sound like she's 16. She sounds like she's 12. And I was like really surprised. I was like, wait a minute. Then I realized that when it comes to young adult fantasy, especially these days, everyone is looking for romanticy.
Mm-hmm.
The only love in my book is like love of family, food, faith. Like there is no other love. There's all that other love, but not like that kind. And I realized that, wait a minute, like did I accidentally write a middle grade novel because of like the voice that I had and the character and that struggle of carving out a new path, right? At that particular age. And I'm like, whoa. So I told my agent, you know what? Why don't I revise it down to middle grade, like cut out the subplots, because I had to really reduce the word count. It could no longer be 80,000 young adult fantasy. It had to be more like 60,000 middle grade. And she was on board. She's like, yep, go for it. So then we entered the revision stage, but I had to like really brutally cut out like a lot of characters, who
Yeah.
sadly, will not meet the light of day. And that really helped my book become even stronger, because then I could narrow it down to the heart of the story. So yeah, so that became like 2022. That was like the year of revisions. And as you can relate, my kids would got sick, you need to get immunized, there's like school, there's like, hangriness, tantrums. It's the whole thing, this life keeps happening. Not just on my side, but on my agent's side, because she has a son as well. And sometimes there were points where I was like, I would finish my revision and she was just about to read it, and then something else would happen. So it's like all these delays. So I just kept writing like another book. I would just work on something else just to keep my sanity going. And it wasn't until 2023 where I had to put my foot down and I'm like, I cannot look at this book anymore. This like I can't do this. I'm gonna see if this is strong enough to go out to submission. And I think thankfully it was one of my agents had a agent friend, I think who may have been Australian. And then her advice was to go out to Australian editors first. And once I get an Australian book deal, then the US will pay attention, which is exactly what happened.
Your agent had an Australian agent friend. So then did you
Yes.
go out on submission with that Australian agent, or how did that work?
Oh no, so it was still my agent, so who one based in the US. So what she did was she pitched my manuscript to Australian publishing houses, like the big five plus Allen and Unwin. And the only one who responded was Allen and Unwin, and then it happened really, really quickly, which is again publishing, where it's like nothing happens for years, and suddenly in a few weeks, like, whoa, I got life-changing book deal. I got on the call with my editors who really loved my book, and they just got it. Like they got the vision that I had. And I still remember like Jody telling me like this book will be such a gift to readers. And then fast forward like 2 years later, a couple of weeks ago, I'm in Melbourne, like receiving the Readings Children's Prize and like thanking my editor who's just smiling at me. So surreal. Yeah, that was amazing. And because of my Australian book deal, then Deba, my Salaam Reads editor, emailed Ali shortly after we could finally announce my book deal. And she said, congratulations on the book deal. North American rights still available. So we were like, yes, strategy worked.
Yeah, yeah, that is
Yeah.
interesting that, well, and I guess when you were shopping it around in the US, it was still a YA, but you were
Yes.
really kind of getting the runaround. And then as soon as it got picked up in Australia, people were like, oh, wait a minute, we're
Yes,
interested.
exactly.
It came out in Australia sometime before it came out in the US and Canada, right?
Yes.
And then were there any changes to the book at all to make it, I don't know, like more for US market or North American markets?
Yeah. So interestingly, and this is the first I've heard of it, because when I asked my other author friends, they were like, no, it was pretty much the same version everywhere that where it was distributed. But Deepa very intentionally wanted to do something significantly different. So the ending was more or less the same. But for the villain character, he had a deeper backstory. I don't want to give any spoilers away, but if you were to read the Australian version and you would compare it to the US version, you would see like a significant difference in how the villain is handled. Just put it that way. I'll try to be as vague as possible.
Interesting.
And I honestly feel that the US version is the stronger version of my book. But I'm also thrilled the Australian one won the prize. So I'm like, yay to
Yeah,
both.
yeah.
So
That's very
yeah,
interesting. Do they have the same cover?
they have the same cover. Yes, they do. So it's like the typesetting is different, but the image in the
The
front is
image
pretty
is the
much the
same.
same. Yeah. So it's it can be hard to tell if you don't really pay attention.
Yeah, I find that interesting when, for example, a book will come out in the US and then it will come out in the UK and have a totally different cover. And it's like,
Mm,
what is it that's different? Or like they think that like things are going to, attract people differently depending on where they live. And I mean, I guess they must know these things, but
yeah.
it's fascinating to me to kind of compare covers sometimes. So, and then interesting that for you, it's like the same covers pretty much, but then you made changes to the actual novel.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
that's,
It's the content.
I guess I want to go back to changing your manuscript from YA to middle grade. Do you have any thoughts for people who are maybe trying to decide, like, have I written YA or middle grade, or is this story better for YA or middle grade? And I guess you talked a little bit about YA tending to have more romance. and middle grade tending to have more of like the family love. But I don't know, do you have any other suggestions of the difference between the two?
It's also that elusive middle grade voice. Like a lot of authors who don't write middle grade, oh, it's so hard, I could never do it. The voice, so on and so forth. And I guess I kind of do agree with them because I didn't realize it when I was writing my young adult version of my book, but I had written with a very middle grade voice. I love middle grade fiction. And the way I draft is I listen like audiobook versions of like Hannah Alkaff's middle grade novels, Gracie Kim's middle grade novels, like Tay Keller's, all of these incredible middle grade authors that draw from folklore, different countries. And I think that's definitely informed how I wrote. So, were I to be writing a young adult novel for real this time, I would definitely listen or read to young adult novels to catch that voice. And I think like there are definitely really like tactful, innocent ways to introduce romance to a middle grade audience, but that wasn't the story I was trying to tell. And often, like the story you're trying to tell will inform you as well. Like, what is the story that has come to you? Because I remember, like, when I'm pregnant, I get the most vivid dreams. And Inshira came to me, like, fully formed as a character, except I thought she was 16.
Yeah.
And it turns out she's 12. Okay. So, like, for example, like writing a young adult novel, if you're like solving like a murder or something, or like it's like warring kingdoms and romantasy, like it kind of tells you the kind of age range you're going for, right?
Right.
As opposed to like my story, which is very much rooted in like faith and family and making a different choice, like that felt very middle grade. So I'd say like follow your intuition, and because I don't plot per se, which I have a nightmare revising because I'm like a plantster,
Hmm.
where I kind of have an idea where I'm going. So it's kind of like imagine you're walking on in the dark and you're going like camping and you have a little like light thing and your torch in your forehead. And the only way I know how to get there is I have to walk it. I just have
Yeah.
to keep going. And while I walk, like I meet these interesting characters and like, oh, plot twist, and oh, okay. So I won't know what happens until I reach the end. I have to
Yeah.
write my way through it.
Do you
Yeah.
have a general idea of what the ending is going to be, or is it total discovery?
I feel like I have a general idea because the more I write, the more I know my characters. And as I know them, then I can figure out the choices that they would make. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
that's similar to the way that I write. I'll have the initial like premise and then I'll have some vague notion of where it's
Yeah.
going.
Yeah, that's right.
But then exactly, then I just like I'm like, well, the only way to find out how we get there is to write and then just
To
kind of
write.
get
Yes.
to
Yeah.
yeah, and then get to know what the characters want and what the how they're going to
Yeah.
react and yeah.
Which sounds like deceptively simple, right? Just write it. But when you have like children and like a house to run, and, like bills to worry about, then like what I love and miss most about writing, especially as I've just come back from the high of like my Melbourne trip and being able to write uninterrupted, it's like having long hours of uninterrupted writing time, like sinking into my book and the world and the characters and blocking everything else out. Like I love that so much and I miss that a lot.
Do you foresee getting to have some of that anytime soon, or is it too busy in your life right now?
Oh, I mean it's December. My kids are gonna be on like holidays, school holidays very soon. So I think we're gonna be ramping up to a different season. But I can count on my husband like taking the kids just like to the playground or park just to give me that time to because I'm a calmer, happier mom when I've had my writing recharge, right? And
Yes.
it's just so lovely having my kids involved you know through this whole journey because they see my books, they've come to at least like one of my book events, and they know like okay, like mama's a writer, and this is what she loves to do, this is what makes her happy, and they also know that when I don't get that time, then I'm not likely to be cranky.
Have your older kids read the book?
Yes, my 10-year-old, she's like one of those kids who just loves like the scary creepy stuff, so yeah, she really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice that you can share it with them.
Yeah, it's really special.
So I'm working right now on a an adult. I used to write YA and middle grade, and now I'm writing more adult, and I'm working on this adult thriller. And my daughter, my older daughter, who's 8, is like, "Oh, what's your book about?" And I'm like, how much
Uh,
can I tell her? There's murder involved. I'm not sure I want to explain to her what it's, and it's like sweet that she's asking, but so it's nice that you
yeah.
actually have a book that you can read with your kids. So you said you were working on another novel. Are you now working in the middle grade space, or what are you working on now?
So I'm actually in the combination zone of like waiting for good news for another middle grade, hopefully, while I'm working on a young adult romance. To see this is intentional now, yes, and a nonfiction book proposal for like a memoir. So I've got a few things, yeah, and
Oh,
so this
wow.
actually helps because when I have limited time, then like it's really hard to sink into like the world building of a young adult romantasy when like my kids are running around and all this stuff. But what does help me is just like thinking of ideas, like when I get some time, what can I draft? Yeah, and I guess that brings me to the next point of how I've been reflecting about how like writing will always be there. It's always been there throughout my whole life. It'll always still be there, but the season of small children, that's finite. Like that's very, very fleeting, even though it doesn't feel like it right now because I'm so
Yeah.
tired. So I'm trying hard as well to just like enjoy time with them, like putting thoughts of like writing and when's my next book deal, putting that out of my mind for a little while and just enjoying time with my kids. Like my workaholic tendencies are always there. Right? And I have to like
Yes.
calm down. Like, like I want my children to remember me, not just like writing, but like enjoying time with them. Like, and they're hilarious, funny, warm kids. And and I was telling them how like we do this thing where every day, well, when I remember, we're like, okay, what are we grateful for? What are some tricky things? And what are some things we're looking forward to? Like, so this little ritual that I try to like anchor, which helps me, number one, and hopefully helps them as well, right? And just to spotlight how already have so many amazing things. Because one thing I've realized, like I thought, right, that once I get a book deal, once I get published, I won't be anxious anymore. And I realized that actually, wait, my anxiety has just morphed
Oh,
like
interesting.
different ways, right? So it can become this like hamster wheel of feeling like, wait, I thought I got what I wanted, except now I want more things.
Yes,
Oh my
definitely
gosh,
heard
yeah.
this from other people too. What are some of the things that you're anxious about now?
Well, now it would be like, okay, will my next milligrade fantasy sell, right? Or it's like, will I get to break into the adult market because I debuted as a milligrade author? Like, there is like no end to like anxiety if you ask me, So there's always something to worry about. So what helps me with that is just working on the next thing, like sinking into that delicious hyper focus mode that can only happen when my kids are at school and I've like done the cooking for
Yeah.
the day. It's tough, right? So I think like for moms with like young children, I really feel like if we can like just take a break once a year for like 2 weeks, if possible, even a week. And I got that time with my mom. Like I flew from KL to Melbourne. She flew from Sydney to Melbourne. We had a terrific time. It was so nice, like having my mom with me. We'd go on walks, have coffee, I'd write, we just enjoy time together. And I didn't have a little human, three
Yeah.
little humans like clinging on to me, but I miss them desperately at the same time. I'm like, oh my God, the duality of motherhood.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Everything you're saying makes so much sense to me. Going back to this idea of like the seasons of our lives, because I feel like I remember saying to a friend of mine who's a mother and a writer, and this was when I think our children were younger, and I was saying it to her, but I was also saying it to myself, like, we will always be writers, but we'll only be mothers of young children for a short time. And like give yourself some grace. And, because I'm the same as you. I'm very type A. I like want to be like being productive. like also just like the kind of the season of the year where like there are sometimes like summer when my kids are home from school and I also run a summer camp. Like I'm not doing any writing during the summer at all.
Yeah.
But that's a time when I can be like letting ideas percolate or like
Yeah.
getting excited about books I want to write so that when they do go back to school, I can like hit the ground
Jump
running.
right in. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but then like for us, basically from Thanksgiving to New Year's, again, it's like no writing is happening during the holidays.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just kind of like knowing like there are times for that productivity and there are times where you're not and you're letting yourself recharge or get ideas.
Yeah. That's really important to remember, like the seasons and having reasonable expectations of ourselves and our children according to those seasons, right? Because exactly like you said, when it's summer, like you would be so much more upset if you had hoped to like draft your next novel, right? And it's like, don't do that to yourself.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
similarly, like for me right now, where it's just funny how my husband was saying, like in Malaysia, whenever it's up like school holidays, it's really common to have a lot of weddings, a lot of family weddings. And, as like a neurodivergent mom, like, weddings are like a sensory nightmare for me. It's the loud live band, like lots of people, unfamiliar surroundings. So it's like, okay, it's okay. We'll just get through this and we go home and I just need to collapse for a little while. Right? So that might not be the time to try to untangle a complicated plot point, but it can be the time where I can pop my headphones on and like just listen to a fantasy novel, for example,
Yeah.
because that refuels me in a different way. It can then help inform my writing.
I guess another question I had for you as a middle grade author is have you done any school visits, either virtual or in person?
So no virtual yet, but in person, yes, yeah. So particularly when my book was out in Australia last year, that was when I had like the bulk of my school visits. So that was really fun. I think it's one of the highlights, even though I get really tired afterwards. It was really thrilling just being able to speak to kids. And I think like what makes me happiest is seeing like little kids who looked like me when I was little, just like looking at me on the stage, like, wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
that's so
that
heartwarming.
must be so rewarding.
And this little boy came to me afterwards. He's like, oh, miss, do you know my uncle? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe.
Oh,
So
that's
it's so
sweet.
sweet. Like, oh, right. For them to see that someone who looks a little bit like them, can wrote a book and one day they can as well. It's like so encouraging. I don't even have to like say anything. It's me standing there with a book. It's like, oh wow. And their questions are always so funny. I think they probably a lot of them think that writers make a lot more money than we really do. So
Yes.
it's
Oh
like
my gosh.
there are easier ways to make a lot more money. Okay. Do not do this to yourself. It's truly like a calling.
My 8-year
Um,
old is always like, I'm going to write a book and make $1 million. And I'm like, go ahead and write
mm,
that book, but don't do it for the money.
but it was like the school visits were always like really, really, really rewarding, really fun. And the bookstore visits, the
Yeah.
signings, all of that. But especially because it was like my debut, I think I really went all out. But I think by the end of that victory lap, I felt like really tired. And I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna do this again for a whole year. And I didn't. But when I did fly back to Malaysia though, I think I did maybe like one school workshop, so that was really nice. And after that, it was just focusing on writing the next book. And not until recently when I flew down to Melbourne to receive my prize and get to chat to my editor in person. But as much as like I enjoy like author events and book readings and signings and going to schools, like it's actually very depleting as well. So I need to like rest like significantly after that.
Yeah.
And but it's great that like my publicist, she came with me, she made sure I had snacks and took me out for lunch. It was really nice being cared for. So Allen and Unwin is a terrific publisher. They're amazing.
Oh, wow. I'm just thinking, like, as the mom who's usually the one making sure you have snacks for everyone, it must feel really nice to be like, oh, someone brought snacks for me.
Yes.
That's
Oh,
so
that's so
nice.
nice. Yeah. I wish I had the opportunity to launch my book in the US. But given politically how things are at the moment, I might try to go to New York directly over the next 4 years at some point,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a tough one, right? And I think that's one of the challenges being an author who's not based in the US. It's like, how do you effectively market your book when you're not in the country? When, in my case, I don't feel necessarily very safe, flying in and facing any trouble at the borders, things like that, right? So it's hard, it's tricky, and I don't have any answers, but I'm glad at least we're having an interview about it.
Yeah, well, and I mean, it is at least there's so much you can do virtually these days where, you don't have to be in person. Well, I don't know if you have an answer for this or not, but what is something that has surprised you on your writing or publishing journey? And it can be something good or bad or one of each.
I think like one thing that has like surprised me was like definitely like winning like the Readings Children's Prize and having like so much love and support for this little book of mine that has gone so far in such a short period of time. I think like writing about that third space kid, who doesn't feel at home anywhere, is always different, but ends up being that's like her superpower. I think that really speaks to a lot of kids these days. What's really really amazing for me as well is like the support from like booksellers, from librarians, who don't even share like my background or my faith, but they see something in my book that's so resonating or appealing, or it's just amazing. I love that now it's a bridge, it's a point of discussion and connection, which is one of the most beautiful things about creating art. It gives a chance for us to like connect and heal.
Oh, yeah. I love all of that. That's so
Yeah,
wonderful.
that's been really cool. But like the challenging part, this one even surprised like my publishers and publicists. Like, and originally because I was in Sydney for only like a short time, my publicist was like, okay, we're gonna take you to the private Muslim schools, so you can talk about your book. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, I'd love to go to public school so like I can talk to all the kids, because my book can be for everybody. And but she's like, okay, we'll see how we go. But sadly, like all the Muslim schools that we contacted, even like the one I graduated from, were like, yeah, your book might be too controversial, and
Really?
and there was like a literal like WhatsApp chat, like parents were like, be careful, don't let your child read this book. It encourages black magic and sorcery. I'm like, you clearly did not read my book if you're coming to that incorrect conclusion.
Oh, that is so
I
frustrating when people
know.
are saying things like avoid this book and they haven't actually read it. And
Yeah, so and then yeah, that was disappointing, but there was one really like brave and lovely Muslim organization that like, open arms, come and have an event with us, no problem, in a kids workshops. That was really nice. And I think that it's because like and I kind of get it as well. Like if I had not moved back to Malaysia, if I had stayed in Sydney, I would have continued this kind of like model minority mindset, this siege mentality. It's really hard to create art when I'm feeling so polarized. So coming to Malaysia,
hmm.
where I felt normal for the first time in my life, that gave me permission to just take up space and write the story of my dreams. But it can be pretty confronting, I think, to suddenly like have in bookstores like the taboo stories, like right up in front and center. But I love this because you get to talk about hard things. You get to talk about ancestral trauma, resilience, naming things, right? But I guess like not everybody's ready to have these conversations. And I mean, I have a teacher's guide that I developed, with Alan and Unwin, and hopefully Salaam Reads as well, to help guide these conversations, right? Hopefully it'll come a time where it's okay to talk about these things, you know?
Yeah, it's very interesting to hear you say that when you were living in Sydney and you were, kind of in the minority, that you didn't feel as comfortable sharing the story, and it took going back to Malaysia to be like, okay, now I can
Yeah.
let it all out.
Yeah.
It's not great, but it's interesting to hear that that's kind of like what it took for you to feel comfortable
Yeah.
to write and share your story. But I'm so glad the book is out
Yeah.
there and that kids are able to read it and then I'll keep my fingers crossed for the other one.
Yes, hopefully there'll be good news soon. Publishing takes so long. And then you even when you get the good news, and you can't say anything about the good news until like months later.
Oh my gosh. I know. That is one thing that's very crazy
I
to me is
know.
like, you have some exciting news, but you're like, oh, but I can't
That's
tell
right.
anybody oh my goodness. Well, I end every episode with a tip for the road for our listeners, and it can be about writing or querying or anything along the writing and publishing journey. So what tip do you have for us?
Okay, well, again, I'm biased because of my life with small children, but I would say that if you're like a mother with young kids and you're like, will I ever get published? Like, give yourself time and grace, like, sink into the season you're in. Like, the very act of like motherhood, that's an act of creation as well. Like, you're creating memories, like, you brought new life into this world. It's amazing, and it really helps to like alchemize your time because you have so little of it. So you become a lot more efficient. So give yourself time, and be gentle with yourself and your kids, and the writing will come, the books will come, and apparently one day they will leave home and you'll have so much time and you'll be like desperately missing them. Apparently, I've heard this, right? And that's even more time to write, right? And I can honestly like publishing is it's not a meritocracy. I think that's something that like really like shook me to the core. Because like type A student, right? It's like wait, right? Sometimes it's just about you can have the most amazing book, but it needs to land in the right agent's inbox, the right editor's inbox at the right time. And that has nothing to do with your skill or your worthiness as a writer. Like you're already one. You're already made it. Especially if you got an agent, like you're already like doing super well. It's just a matter of time before that, novel idea reaches the right editor. And to just take breaks, be kind to yourself, go to a beach, walk to a forest, like touch the earth or the soil, these things that help to ground you. Because I think the best way to survive publishing, I potentially thrive, is to be with people who are not from that world at all. Just to remind you, there's like so much else out there, not to let it consume you.
Yes.
Yeah. And like kids are terrific at
Yeah.
that. They're like pull you right back down.
They'll pull you right back to the present.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I could not have said that better myself. That is all. I agree 100%. Well, thank you so much I was going to say for staying up late to talk to me, but you told me you're a
I
night owl,
love
so
staying up
you,
late.
you don't mind. But I'm so glad we were able to make it work. And yeah, I'm going to have to get a copy of your book for my kids because they love, especially the 8-year-old, she's
Oh,
very into anything magical.
I
And
hope she
so I
likes
think
it.
she'll
Yeah.
like it. Again, a huge thanks to Raidah for talking to me from all the way across the ocean, and a reminder that you can find Raidah's book and also the books that she mentioned earlier in the show on my bookshop shop, the link to which is in the show notes. Okay, see you next time. Thanks so much for listening to The Long Road to Publishing. All the books we discuss on the podcast can be found at my bookshop shop, the link for which is in the show notes. You can find me online on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Substack with the handle Eva Langston. Even better, subscribe to my newsletter for writers at evalangston.substack.com and feel free to send me an email. The podcast address is longroad.pub@gmail.com. The Long Road to Publishing is produced and edited by me, Eva Langston, and the intro-outro music comes from the artist's Soundroll on Upbeat. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and I'll be back soon with more publishing stories and more tips for the road.